What's up, guys? When we left off with the Middle Ages. We finished the Middle Ages and we were preparing to kind of finish off that essay when we last left. So, just to refresh your memory, the Middle Ages was mostly about feudalism, but we also discussed a lot of other topics: the plague, the Crusades, the power of the Catholic Church. We started the unit talking about Germanic invasions and the collapse of Rome, etc. And then we got into feudalism after that and discussed, serfs, knights, nobles, king, and how, all of those relationships worked amongst those different classes of people. And then we kind of finished off with the Crusades and the plague and stuff. And that leads right into the next unit that is about a period of time called the Renaissance. This kind of comes right out of the Middle Ages, and we'll go over why that is. But the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to concentrate on, in general, why is this time different from the Middle Ages, okay? You guys did a ton of research when you were writing that essay about the Middle Ages, so a lot of you have a really, really good idea about a lot of the stuff that was happening during the Middle Ages. So this shouldn't be too difficult, but I do want to kind of get a grip on exactly, what the differences are, and that's what we're going to be going over. So for starters, just to kind of review the end of the Middle Ages and why does this particular time period kind of come to an end? Firstly, the introduction of gunpowder makes knights useless. We went over the idea of class interdependence, the idea that each class is dependent on other classes to do certain things, and that if you remove one class from society, the rest of the system kind of collapses in on itself. So once gunpowder shows up, that's pretty much what it does to the entire class of knights. It removes them from the equation and the entire system begins to crack. Couple that with the plague. I know you guys remember the plague, and we saw a lot of gross pictures and stuff like that. The plague kills huge amount of serfs, and we went over the idea that serfs live in really close proximity to each other, and we had a discussion about how just in general, the higher class you are, the more space you have to yourself. So, serfs living, put it this way, serfs weren't practicing responsible social distancing. They were living, a foot away from each other. And there's 30 of them in an apartment, so on and so forth. So disease spreads, wipes them out for the most part, and they're the whole working class. And again, with the feudal system, we focused on class interdependence. So this is another class that's kind of removed from the equation also. We also talked about the Crusades. Now, the Crusades is the important part that is really going to lead into this unit about the Renaissance, because the Crusades leads to cultural diffusion between East and West, and it also brings about an increase in trade. So these people start to have a greater desire for goods from the other side. And it is that trade and the economics and the economic impacts of that trade that make the Renaissance possible. And we'll see exactly what we mean in a second. And also, during this time period, you're going to see a rise in what's called secularism, which is looking at the world from a non-religious viewpoint. We went over the strength of the Catholic Church in the last unit, but just in general, the whole world has been just doing whatever the church says for 1,000 years, literally, in some cases longer than that. But, after this literally 1,000-year period of just listening to whatever the church says and doing whatever the church says to do, people will begin to start examining things from a more human and personal perspective, and not just kind of being automatons that are, obeying orders shouted down from on high by the Catholic Church. That's all going to change. So that's a big theme here too. So we said the Crusades were the important kind of part of the end of the Middle Ages that leads right into this. And the idea is that this increase in trade that is a result of the Crusades creates a lot of wealth in Italy. So all of those goods that start pouring into Europe as a result of this increase in trade are all coming through Italy. So you can see the map down here, a lot of these trade routes and where they're kind of coming into. The Italian peninsula here, this boot, is kind of a major trading hub. So what happens there is that these families that kind of deal with shipping and trade and stuff like that begin to get very, very rich families like the Medici family. They become hugely, hugely rich. Um, and exploiting this increase in trade is a big part of that. So part of what they begin to do is they start to pay artists just to create, for example. Um, until the Renaissance, no one is a professional artist, really. That's not really a thing. Art is something that people dabble with in their free time when they're not, working or something like that. So this wealth, this incredible wealth that starts to become generated in Italy from the increase in trade fuels patrons, people who give financial support to a group, organization, or activity. In this particular case, the creation of art, the paint, sculpture, everything. So that's going to be a major hallmark of this also. And if it wasn't for this increase in trade, this wouldn't be possible. And the increase in trade is due to the Crusades. So that's the connection point between last unit and this unit, just so you guys understand that. Last slide. Some of the big themes of this unit are really going to become kind of questioning authority is a big one. We mentioned that, the rise in secularism, the idea that people will start to think for themselves, they will start to question authority in a lot of different ways. The greatest authority of all at the time is the Catholic Church, at least for most of this unit. So we see that questioning of the Catholic Church as a kind of a big theme. And next is really just kind of focus on individuals. We will go over some of these terms, humanism, for example. But the real people and their individualism will be the focus of art and literature, music, and other aspects of society. Where people before used to create things just to kind of pay tribute to the church or to the government or, things like that. This, the regular people will become the subjects of art and literature and so on and so forth. And we'll eventually look at a variety of different kind of examples of that happening in this unit. And last but not least, you're going to see the power and influence of religion will decline big time. There will be an introduction of another new religion, this time, arguably, just as impactful as the Eastern Orthodox religion from Byzantine Empire. So, you're going to see another new religion, and this is going to kind of lead in general to the decline of the power of religion as compared to governments throughout the unit. We will make that clear. So this is just kind of big themes that we're going to see. We'll kind of unpack each of these as we go, but just to kind of set the stage about what we're looking at, it starts with this. So the classwork for this first lesson is really, I'm just going to ask you guys to examine this graphic organizer that kind of spells out different aspects of life during the Middle Ages and different aspects of life during the Renaissance and kind of puts them right up next to each other. And then I have a bunch of follow-up questions asking you to kind of compare and contrast the different aspects of life between them. So I will be on our live Google Doc or Google Meet, whichever we end up doing. I got to check the voting on your Google form later. But I will be around to help you. So, if you have questions or need, any kind of clarification on any of this, feel free to hop on there. And I will be in contact with you guys, all right? So we'll see how it goes, all right? Good luck. See you later.